We want to welcome everyone tonight. Thank you for being here. I will tell you, there's a lot of things going on in town tonight. The wine walk's going on. There was a meeting with the group that's going down to the BRA Monday. So we've got quite a few people that are out and about. But we've got a great meeting here scheduled for tonight. Hi, Judy.
Hi there.
And we welcome you here. I hope we've got a great speaker tonight, and we're looking forward to what Carl's got to say. To let you know that the Tea Party has been busy, if you haven't seen it out on Facebook, some of your Tea Party members have been to Austin on April the 15th for the rally down there. And there were people from all over the state that congregated there on the 15th. So it was a very good meeting. We talked to a lot of the state reps and state senators. It came out, the real conservative ones really came out and made a little talk, visited with us. Unfortunately, Joe Strauss didn't come out. And Jim Keffer didn't come out.
Oh, bummer.
I don't know why, but they didn't show. But we also went to a rally over in the North Tarrant Tea Party, and they had as their guest speaker Alan West. So, hey, if y'all haven't heard this man speak, he is a blessing to listen to. And you know, he reminds me of Ted Cruz because he stands there without a note or without a moniker or without a teleprompter and just speak from his heart and his mind. It's fantastic. And then Tuesday night, some more of us. In fact, the ones that went to these different things, Monday we were in Dallas for Heritage Action. That's Jim Deminsker. Or you guys that went to these different things, y'all all stand. Stand. All of you stand. All right. You guys get up. You two get up. They were in Dallas because I saw them. They're in district. Stay standing. Stay standing now. All of you stay standing. But this Heritage Action Group was really a great meeting. We were in a conference for about an hour, I guess, and then they had the rally that night, and had right at 1,000 people there, so it was really good. And then Tuesday night we went to a new conservative group over in Parker County, which they had the meeting right over to Lido, and Alan West was there also. So we got a double dose of Alan West in the last couple of weeks. But you can't get too much of this guy when you listen to him speak. But thank all of you for going. But that's just to let you know. Most of the time, the Reed's pretty good about getting this information out and to let you know what's going on. If you get the opportunity to go and listen to these people, we encourage you to do it. This is Alan is a real conservative. I see the boss of the Tea Party is waving her hand over there. Yes.
Well, I just wanted to say that the more of these things that you attend, the more excited you get about how our country can be saved. I know we've got somebody here who's been going with us quite a bit, and she said, you know, I've been sitting around thinking, oh, what a nice little world I live in, isn't this great? And then she's become more educated, and she said, you know what I'm going to do? The next 16 months, I'm dedicating everything to being an activist and trying to make a difference. And that's why we really encourage you to go to these things. They're really, you learn a lot and you really get the feeling that you are important and you can make a difference. So, that's all I'm going to say.
And we won't mention her name, but her initials were Marty Barber. What's up, Marty?
Say that if anybody's interested in going to one of these things and you don't have a car or don't want to drive at night or whatever, call us because we always have at least a couple of cars going. Either Reen and Don or myself or our next representative over here, Mike's driven to a couple of them, so.
What's that gonna represent? Are you hiding out over there, huh?
And, another thing about Marty, today's your birthday. We said you wouldn't. Today's your birthday. Well, happy birthday, Marty.
Thank you.
At this time, Nita, would you lead us in our prayer for tonight, please?
Heavenly Father, in Jesus' name, we thank you for the opportunity to come together and voice our opinions on concerns of our nation. I ask that you bless each one here, that they have a safe trip home, and Father God, I ask that you bless our military, those that are deployed and those that are in the States in their training. And Heavenly Father, I ask that what we do and say bring glory to your name. In Jesus' name, amen.
That's great. Buddy, would you come and lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you so much. And at this time, yes, sir?
I heard one of the radio broadcasters talking about what Raphael Cruz is doing to Cruz's campaign, and I just wanted to shoot my pistol at the radio station.
Well,
That was part of one of those things that you got us to go to, and that was great. And hearing that man speak, and anybody speaking about godly things like that, I'm all for him. So
he's a great guy. He really is. And you're going to get an opportunity to hear him in July. Really? Talk about it in just a minute. Right at this time, I would really like to recognize all of our veterans that are here with us tonight. All of our veterans, y'all please stand. Thank you, guys. We really appreciate that.
And girl. Dawn and girl.
And girl, yes. We appreciate everybody. Elected officials. We need to recognize our elected officials that are here tonight. And we've got Katie Lane. County.
County clerk.
County clerk. So
very faithful too to the Tea Party.
She is that. She is that. She does a great job videoing for us and then putting it out. So we don't know what we'd do without her. She's a great girl. We have some. Is there anyone running for an office? Oh, there he is.
Running for State Rep District 60, Jim Keffer's spot. If I could take a second though, I've got some sign-in sheets. They're public support sheets for social media and the newspaper. If you guys would like to lend your name to support me for the race, please sign it, and that way I'll have it for when I put it on social media or in the newspaper. Thank you very much if you sign it, okay? Appreciate it.
We couldn't have a better candidate for our state rep job.
Absolutely. He will be there when we've gone down there the next time.
Yes. Yeah.
I was there the last time.
Want to announce that there's a BRA meeting Monday in Waco. There's a bus that will be leaving the Brookshire's parking lot. They'll start loading the bus at 6:15. The bus will leave at 6:30. We have 10 seats set aside. How many out of this group would like to go to that? Or is planning to go to that?
I'm speaking.
You're speaking, okay. Mike and
When?
Green, all right.
When?
And the rest
This
of
Monday.
Monday.
Yeah, this Monday. Yeah, this Monday. Anybody else? If there's more than, I understand we got an email from Joe Williams today, and you can contact him. Judy's here tonight. She's probably gonna have a little chat about that in just a second. You want to talk about that now, Judy?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
Well, I just want to reiterate that if you haven't already signed up for the bus ride, you can still do that. There are a few seats available. But what I'd like for you to do, Reen, is make a list. If you get more people signed up to want to go on the bus ride, let us know. That way we can determine if we have room. We have room on the bus right now, but we also have the city van available if we need it. And I would just like to encourage all of you to attend this meeting down at the BRA board meeting on Monday morning, because it's specifically designed to protest essentially and verbalize our discontent with the way that the Brazos River Authority has managed the water in Lake Granbury to this point. And we won't have too many more chances to tell them what we think about them. Now, they have a reputation of really not caring too much about people and what we think, or about what's happened with the lake. So if any of you, and you probably have, signed the petition against them getting more water, that's the 5851 request for 400,000 more acre feet of water, which is essentially the rest of the water in the Brazos River Basin, if you're aware of that or not. So that means they would have the rest of the water in our Brazos River Basin to mismanage. And that's what we think they've done. So this is your opportunity, and in a way, because we've been trying over and over and over again to get them to pay attention to what we think is a travesty, this might be our last chance to show them that we're really serious about what we think they've done. And we have over 6,000 signatures on those petitions, and we're hoping that I don't know, I think that how can they ignore the fact that 6,000 people, that's more than half the population of Granbury, have signed to tell them, we don't want you to have any more water. So that's kind of the push that we're trying to make, and because of the circumstances that have already gone before, this might be our last chance, because in August, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality will make the final decision about whether or not they get that water. So I would appreciate it if you're so inclined to sign up. Yes, sir.
What time is the meeting?
Well, we're going to leave Brookshire's parking lot at 6:30. The bus will be there at 6:15. And so if you want to be on the bus, you can come there. You said you had 10 people signed up?
We asked for 10.
Or you asked for 10 seats, so you don't have people's names yet?
Right.
Okay,
Right,
so
what time is the meeting?
the meeting is at 8 o'clock in Waco.
Just, can I add something too? Just real quick. If you guys haven't been following what's been going on with the water issues, there's going to be a lot of really good information presented by the speakers. They wanted to make sure that all the information was covered. We talked about that today to make sure that we're getting the information out, not only of the reasons that we don't support the BRA's current actions, some of the history and things are going to be presented that will be really good to educate you on the water issue. So if you haven't been involved to this point, it is a good opportunity to learn some of this information, because when I first started getting into this, you only know that they're taking too much water. You don't know all the basics and all this stuff that you could be easily educated on, and they're going to present all this. We have lots of different speakers. We have Tony Allen, he's a city councilman. Mike is going to be speaking. I'll be speaking. There's going to be a lot of people presenting this information, so it's a good opportunity for you to come out, be educated, and hear why we need to stand up for Granbury, why this is an important fight that we are fighting. Thank you.
Yes, sir, back there.
Yes, is there homeowners association members from Possum Kingdom and Lake Bridgeport and Lake Whitney lined up with you guys to make a bigger voice? You know?
Because we have, the members of LGWA are a compilation of all of the homeowners association. So specifically, I'm pretty sure that there are members from Possum King, from Pecan and De Cordova.
Oh, I meant the other lakes.
What's that?
I meant the other lakes
Well,
that have the same BRA controlling their water.
there aren't too many other entities that the BRA controls. Here's the other thing, and I'll just tell you this. They were, part of the reason we're protesting is the BRA has they have been in negotiations with Possum Kingdom, and they have already made an agreement with Possum Kingdom. It did not include Lake Granbury. So, put that in your pipe and smoke it. We didn't know that till recently. Yes, sir.
I was reading in the Fort Worth paper that our Senator Birdwell, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Weaseled out on a campaign promise he apparently made to confront those people and to get an early review of them. Do you know anything about that?
I certainly do. And you're absolutely right. He weaseled out. We brought up the issue of sunset review to him 4 years ago. And we pressed him, and we pressed him, and we pressed him to please put the Brazos River Authority on the sunset review list. This was 4 years ago. So this year, making it look like he did this grand gesture to get the BRA on the sunset review list. You saw the editorial letter. Unfortunately, the letter, the bill that he approved, that he wrote, supposedly that he wrote it, for some reason, previous to this, the way the sunset review went was it went alphabetical order. So we were thinking, great, BRA, right up there at the top of the list. Guess what? Senator Birdwell's bill put the BRA in with the S's. The San Antonio and the Sabine River, that's where he put the BRA. So they're not going to be reviewed until 2023. And by that time, all of the activity that has occurred that we think is illegal, the statute of limitations will have run out, and they won't be able to be held accountable for that. So that's the deal that Senator Birdwell made.
I didn't mean for us
I'm sorry, yes.
to get in, and what we need certainly is Brian Birdwell to give the other side of this. I talked to an attorney about that very thing, about that statute of limitations. He said, that's not true. It's not true.
Well,
But I don't know. I'm not an attorney.
still 6 years away.
But
Or,
the audit on the BRA was done 18 months ago.
it
And
wasn't a real one. But okay.
yeah. I mean, so
Okay.
there's difference of opinion on this, but so if you've got that much interest, be on the bus Monday morning going down there, because we need to get this straightened out. That's our lake. Now, it's up a little bit, if y'all noticed the last
2
couple of
feet,
days.
yeah.
It's up a little bit, which we're very thankful of. We, believe it or not, out in Decatur, we actually have water underneath our boats. Our boat, not enough to float the boat, but we got a little water underneath there. So, anyway, be on the deal there.
So if you can let us know how many people sign up, and let us know. So, and also, we're gonna provide breakfast and drinks on the bus trip. And then we're gonna stop on the way back and have lunch someplace. I've heard it's really great. So, we look forward to meeting all of you and being on the bus and talking to you when we get a chance, okay?
Sound like a fun trip?
Okay, yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, Judy. All right, I want to talk to you about some other things. This Christian Voters League, we've got this working. One of the gentlemen that attends our Tea Party, we came in tonight and said he went down to the registrar's office, got himself registered so he could register people to vote. And he said, if you've got a place to send me, you send me. Mr. Wilson, will you stand up, give everybody a wave?
Good, good for you.
That's what we've been trying to encourage people with that. The bus ride is free, guys. I would encourage you to go. I would encourage you to go. It's a half a day of your life, but it means a lot to the city and the county. So I would encourage you to go if you can. But anyway, the Christian Voters League we're going to kick this off. Don Meisinger put a lot of time and effort into this. We're trying to get, this is his idea of what we'd like to have on the table when we're trying to register, get the churches to allow us to set these tables up in the churches so we can register Christians to vote. That's what we're zeroing in on, is getting the unregistered Christians going and voting for a Christian. That's what we want. That's what needs to be up there representing, not this clown we've got in the White House right now. We have, and again, we would like for the people that have gone, and I know we've got several out of the Tea Party that went and got their registration done, but we want you to talk to your pastors of the churches that you attend, because I think we're pretty sorted here, and I think we've got 55 churches in the county. So if we could have that many people, registering people to vote in 55 churches, that would be a winning situation. That's our ultimate goal. If we can make that happen, that'll be great. But that's our goal. And I want to tell you some more good news. There's a family out in Cisco, and the pastor is of the church in Eastland. His name is Jerry Maston. One of the neatest guys you ever met in your life. But in July the 16th and 17th, they're going to have what they call a Christian Values Summit here at our conference center. They're looking to have 400 or 500 people to attend this. It will start late Thursday afternoon and be through, they'll go into 9 or 10 o'clock that night and begin the next morning. And Friday afternoon, they'll be through around 3 o'clock or so. And just as a few of the speakers that we know of is David Barton, Raphael Cruz, and Brian Bartlett's going to be there. Now, that's just a few of the speakers we know that's going to be there. But these are all good guys, and we're working to get Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. And we saw him the other night and visited with him about it. We visited with him twice. He says he's for it, get him on the list. And he said, if I'm not already booked, I'll be there. So this will be an opportunity to come and hear this man and the others. If you haven't heard David Barton speak, you're in for the treat of your life. But I will tell you this, if you go to listen to him speak, turn up your hearing aid, listen quick, because he speaks about 90 miles an hour, so you really have to listen to him. But he's got more knowledge than anybody you can believe.
Don, what was that? What were those dates again?
July 16, 17. It's a Thursday, Friday. And we met with a couple of the people Tuesday night, and they're going to be asking for volunteers. They have a multitude of things that have to be done, but we'll be asking you if you would like to volunteer to help put this program on. Things from like greeting people at the door, registering people at the door, that type of thing. So as this thing gets closer and closer, we know more and more about it. We'll be knocking on your door and say, okay, yes, sir.
Would it be possible to set up a registration desk there for non-registered voters?
Well, I'll talk to them about that. That's a good idea.
I mean, you got enough of it here, we can support a pretty good table there.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll talk to Jerry about that. But that's what, I mean,
They got
that's
500 people, that'd be a good place
that'd be a
to
good
start.
start, wouldn't it? You know, and that's what you'll hear out of the speakers. That's some of the subjects that you will hear is getting Christians registered to vote. So great idea. We'll talk to them about that. Let's see. Oh, candidate kitty. This is really nice little candidate kitty. Now remember, we started talking about this before the first of the year. This is putting $25 a month in the kitty every month for the year, and then when the next election time rolls around, you will have this much money to donate to a candidate of your choice. And if you don't have a choice, I'll help you make one. Not mentioning any initials. But we've got a great candidate running for this state race, and we need to support him.
And there's jars up
So-
there, Tom. The jars are up there if they haven't had one.
Pardon?
The jars.
Oh, yeah, here's empty jars. What we like is for all these to be full. And I guess what we're gonna do at our house is, I'll have to take another one and start my own, since she won't let me have that one. So, well, it'll be 2 of them at our house. So we encourage you to do that. It's just a fun way to do it. And, yes, I know, we'll get to that. I've got signs being waved at me at the back of the room. If you guys haven't been coming to our Tuesday night workshop, you are missing a treat. Jim and Carla right over here, they're teaching this, and they're based on the book 5,000 Year Leap. And we leaped a little bit our last meeting because we had Sheriff Roger Deeds here. Guys, it was a great meeting. I mean, it was a great meeting. I mean, it was informative, and Roger was very apprehensive about coming, so we found out, before he got here. He even brought some of his constables with him, to protect him. But he got here, and he kind of met Jim and Carl, and he just kind of chilled out and relaxed. And I'm gonna tell you what, it was very informative, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
I mean, it was a good meeting. And we asked him about things. We asked him about this military equipment, that they have access to, all kinds of things. And he didn't pull any budgets. I mean, he really, it was just a good meeting. So this is what this training session is about. 6:30 here on Tuesday night. Jim does a great job. Carl is right in there with him. So they just do a fantastic job doing that. So we encourage you all to come. Our next month's speaker is a gentleman by the name of Ed Roberts. He lives in El Paso. He's, I think, 30 years in the Middle East. So he's got some really interesting things to tell us. We encourage you to spread the word, be here and listen to Mr. Roberts. Last Monday, wasn't it? We went to the Heritage Action. Was it Monday we went to the Heritage Action? Yes, Monday we were in Dallas at the Heritage Action. That's Jim DeMint's group. And we sat in this conference with him. And the reason I'm going back to this is he was sitting right here, just to the right of us. He was a senator for a certain period of years. And he told us, he said, one of the most, getting phone calls into his office to his staff was almost frightening to those senators if they start coming in bunches. He said 25 phone calls into his office about a certain particular subject that they're fixing to vote on gets their attention. 25 phone calls. Isn't that interesting? And when they get 25 phone calls, they think that's very important about their constituents out in the district, that they better pay attention to what they're saying to them. So we had a vote today. Didn't go the way I wanted it to. Excuse me. Loretta Leach got voted in as the new Attorney General. I called Cornyn's office and asked him not to vote. I was told he would vote for it to go to cloture, but he'd vote no when it came to the floor. And I said, why don't he just vote no so it doesn't get to cloture and doesn't come out to the floor? Just eliminate that part of it, But she's in and she's got approved, so she's now the new Attorney General. But it's important that you call these guys. So with that, I'm going to get our speaker up here, so I'll get a little yangy. But our speaker tonight is Carl Jarvis. He is among today's leading non-academic experts on American constitutional history. And he's the author of The United States of Dysfunction. This book right here. It has a growing list of endorsements from figures such as Martin Blackwell of the Leadership Institute. He's been featured as a guest on shows like Fox and Friends and the Dennis Miller Show. That ought to be a real hit. Carl's a former U.S. naval officer and a longtime resident of Houston, Texas. And you can find Carl online at www.carljarvis.org. And at this time, please welcome Carl Jarvis.
Thank you for having me. I'm actually going to move this table real quick before I get started in case I need to get out here, if y'all don't mind. Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to have a little bit of space to get out in front. I am going to be speaking a lot from notes tonight, unfortunately, because I'm always trying to improve how...
That's our microphone.
Is it on?
No.
It's not on now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is it on? I mean, I can talk loud, but what's going on here?
It was kind of-
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Strange. Maybe the wire's loose. I'm always trying to improve how I convey this message, and so I am going to be using notes a little bit, but also lots of interaction. So the other thing is, before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and pass around a sign-up sheet just in case it gets stuck somewhere in the middle. And the idea here is really twofold. Number one, I want to have a way to continue the conversation. Because me driving up here from Houston and talking to you for one night, I'd like to have a way to continue to help people learn more about some of the ideas I'm going to share. The other thing is, if you know of any other groups that might want to have me speak, so I am passing it around before I start, so if you change your mind while I'm speaking, I'll leave it up here and you can cross out your name at the end. So I'm going to start that over here. So the goal of the talk is really to look at how some of the structural foundations of our Constitution have been eroded in the last 100 years. And I know that Don mentioned the class that y'all have been going through, the 5,000-Year Leap. It's a great book, highly recommend it. You guys are probably using some of the course materials that are supplemental to the book. Yeah. I heard an ex-elected official, ex-Speaker of the House actually, a famous one from the Sugar Land area of Texas, speaking about a year ago. And he was telling a story about how he was embarrassed, when he first got elected to office because he had a constituent ask him how many amendments there were to the Constitution, and he didn't know the answer to that question. A basic question like that is pretty amazing. He then went out and got educated, and I understand he's so reformed now that he's actually writing a book about the Constitution. But it just kind of goes to show, who are we sending to office? What do they believe in? What is their level of knowledge about the system? And I'd be the first, I spent 7 years writing this book, and I'd be the first to say that there's always more to learn. I mean, there's always more to learn about our constitutional history. It's just a never-ending subject. So before we get started with the main part of the talk, though, how many people here think that the country is headed in a generally good direction? Okay, a few laughs. How many people think we're headed in a generally bad direction? Okay, I would tend to agree with you all there. So what I want to do tonight is try and get to the root of some of why that is. So I was raised to believe that we live in the greatest republic in the history of the world. And when I was growing up, I never questioned that our constitutional system is the best in the world. And I still believe that today, despite all the problems that we see and despite the way that the country is headed. And that's why I was so proud when I joined the Navy and I took the oath of office to support and defend the Constitution. There's a lot of people today that don't feel that way about the Constitution, though. I mean, we hear people say all the time, the Constitution is outmoded. They say that there's no way that a document written 200 years ago could possibly be relevant today. They say that the Constitution is an obstacle to progress. They say things like the founding fathers were all slave owners, or they wrote the Constitution to enrich themselves. That was actually a famous book that was written, or actually published during the Progressive Era, The Economic History of the Constitution, where the guy basically made an argument that the whole reason that the Constitution was made was because all of the delegates had bond investments that they needed to pay off. And that thesis, by the way, was since disproven by many other books that have been published since then. But it's just interesting, the kind of ideology that's used to undermine the Constitution. I may have to ditch this. Can you all hear me okay like this? Okay. Be a little easier anyway. And you also hear people say they didn't want the ordinary people to vote. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Never mind that many of the founding fathers died poor, many of them died in obscurity, and never mind that the Constitution was the first of its kind. It was the first Constitution ever written down and based on enduring principles. And never mind that the whole purpose of the Constitution was to allow the people to govern themselves, and so that we wouldn't need a king or a ruler. I mean, that was the whole point, and yet they make all these ridiculous arguments about how the Constitution isn't democratic enough. But what's worse is that this poisonous ideology that they continue to assert over and over, and we hear it in the media all the time, has been slowly destroying our system in the past 100 years. And it's gotten to the point that if this continues, we're going to be lucky if we get to keep the system that we have. If we keep heading in the direction that we are, I think a lot of us here would agree that we're going to end up a lot worse off than where we are today. So how did all this develop? Why is it that there's such a pervasive opinion in this country today that the Constitution is not relevant to how we should be governing ourselves? And why is it that everyone from academia to the media seems to insist that our Constitution is fundamentally flawed? In the view that I've developed, their agenda is pretty simple, because in their vision of the world, America is not special. America doesn't deserve to be a shining city on a hill. America is not exceptional. And if that's your vision of the world, which it is for these people, if you think that America should be just like everywhere else, and if your goal is to make America just like everywhere else, then what's the easiest way to accomplish that? The easiest way to accomplish that is to dismantle the Constitution, tear apart those political institutions that support the Constitution. And once you start doing that, it's a pretty quick path toward the type of things that we're seeing today. Some of these problems, some of this political dysfunction, the endless finger pointing, the distractions, the endless re-election campaigns where you just have career politicians that want to get elected over and over, and they really couldn't care less what the Constitution says. And a lot of them, like the story I was telling in the beginning, don't even know what the Constitution says. And there's even another agenda behind that, I think, if you drill down a little bit further, and this is probably something that a lot of folks here would agree with, is that, it's not just that they don't want America to be exceptional, or that they want America to be more like the rest of the world. It's that they want everyone that lives in this country to be more like everyone else in the world. And they don't want us to have the rights and freedoms that we have in this country. They don't want us to have the opportunities, the entrepreneurship, the individual initiative that's really made this country great. They don't think that we should have the standard of living that we have. It's all about equality, right? They want all Americans to be equal, and they want America to be equal with the rest of the world. So instead of America being a land of opportunity, we'll be just like these third world countries that are governed by these tiny little corrupt oligarchies, and that's who will be running the country. So that's what our country is going to look like if they succeed. And the worst part is, we see it happening right before our eyes today. Today, if you look at everything that's happening, we're getting real close to a tipping point in this country. Not only are career politicians getting reelected over and over and over again in a way that almost seems unstoppable. I mean, all they have to do is raise money, and they continue to get reelected. even in defiance of the sentiments of their constituents. Not only that, but the polling data shows that people are losing confidence in our system of self-government. There's a poll that has consistently shown that approval rating for Congress is in single digits. And if you think about what that means, you have to have a legislature if you're going to have a Republican form of government. And so if everyone just decides that Congress is no good, that Congress can't be fixed, and that we should rely on executive action instead, well, you get a lot of what we have today. Unilateral executive action that is in defiance of the Constitution. I actually think that we're on the verge of great changes in this country. And I will be the first to admit that I don't know if those changes are going to push us further in the direction that we've already gone, or if the pendulum's going to swing back. But frankly, that question of how much further we can go before people start to wake up and take the country back is really the reason why I wrote the book. Because the book is really about, number one, what we would need to do to stop the current trends, but it's also about what a lot of people may need to know if we end up picking up the pieces on the other side of some kind of crisis. Because, you know, when I started working on this book in 2008, I think before 2008, I think a lot of people were sort of happy-go-lucky, you know, the economy was doing great. I started writing the book in 2006 because I saw some of the things that were going to happen. And the reasons why I wrote the book have only become more valid in the time since then. People are starting to wake up to what's happening in the country, and they're starting to ask these questions, and they're looking for answers. Unfortunately, you know, the answers haven't been forthcoming from a lot of the usual sources. Because if you look at what's actually broken, and we're going to talk a lot more about this, but it's actually very specific. It's so specific that you could fix it if we really wanted to. We could fix these problems. The real problem, though, is that when you turn on the news or read the newspaper, all they want to talk about are these political personalities or this he said, she said kind of talk. They want to talk about what candidate is leading in the polls, how much money they have in their war chest, how much money they raised last weekend. I was actually driving over here, and I stopped for gas. And in the gas station, anybody see the USA Today? I didn't actually buy it, but I looked at the headline. The headline was something about the Koch brothers are going to be the kingmakers for the next election, and they're going to look at 5 candidates, and they're going to give $300 million to the lucky winner. Okay? So that's the kind of conversation that is preoccupying this country, especially now that we're into the presidential season. And I would submit to you that not only is that conversation not helping us to address some of these underlying issues, but that conversation is the whole problem that we have in this country. That's the real crisis. Because once you start focusing on these personalities and you're not looking at the system or the process, you're totally ignoring what needs to be fixed. Because truly, if you want to understand why we've had great leaders in this country in our history, it's because of the political institutions that we have. And we've gotten away from that kind of thinking. Our institutions have fallen into disrepair, and I want to tell a quick anecdote about this, quick story. How many people know that FDR was the first presidential nominee ever to stand before a national convention and give an acceptance speech? How many people knew that little fact? Very impressed. Not too many people know that. And if you look at the significance of that and what he went on to do with all his policies and so forth, and the fact that every presidential nominee since then has done the same thing, what does that say about the process, and what does that say about a candidate's desire, willingness to expand the role of government in American society? You know, they want to be the person there appealing to the people. What does that do to the quality of our governance? People forget that before FDR, before Woodrow Wilson, a lot of presidential candidates campaigned from the front porch of their homes. And I'm not saying that we need to go back to that, but it does lend itself to a certain temperament that a lot of the presidential candidates, particularly the ones that end up winning, no longer have. So again, the focus on personalities isn't just a distraction. I would submit to you that it's destroying our system. Because when you focus that way, there are no more checks and balances. And you even get into a situation like we have today where some of these candidates are almost treated like royalty, like messiahs, like cult leaders. And that's what we're seeing today because the system is broken and so much of it revolves around the candidates. So while this is happening, I just want to give one example, and I kind of picked this example because it's something I'm sure people have heard about. How many people have heard about this effort to essentially abolish the Electoral College, but without amending the Constitution? Okay, so more than half of y'all. They call it the National Popular Vote Plan, I think. And the idea is that if you get enough states on board with this plan, they're all going to agree to give all their electoral votes to the winner of the majority, essentially making presidential elections governed by majority rule. And I guess there's a lot of arguments that are made for that proposal. The slogan for it is something like, let's make every vote equal, okay? It kind of goes back to what I was saying a minute ago about this desire for this abstract and theoretical equality, which, I mean, a lot of us here would agree that's not what this country was founded on. It was founded on equal opportunity, not equal outcome, right? So, and it goes back to some of these leveling tendencies that happened during the Progressive era, which we're going to talk more about here in just a minute. But in all of their arguments that they make, and entire books have been written about let's abolish the Electoral College. You have all these academics that want to talk about it endlessly. And they never pay any credence to the fact that the Electoral College was established so that we would have a Republican form of government in this country. It was established so that you didn't have power become so centralized and concentrated in a federal chief executive. And so by throwing away the Electoral College for this abstract and theoretical idea that everyone should have an equal right to vote, we're totally ignoring the lessons of history that the Founding Fathers based our Constitution on. And it'll just be one more step in this century-long march to eliminate the safeguards that we need to protect our Republican institutions. Because they know that if they can dismantle those political institutions that made our country great, we'll end up just like every other country in the world. Now, when we talk about the Progressive era, there's always sort of the standard history of the Progressive era that I've heard repeated a lot. So people talk about the Federal Reserve, the income tax, the alphabet soup regulatory agencies that Woodrow Wilson created and then FDR expanded once he got elected. All of these were changes that did not exist before Wilson was elected, or certainly not nearly to the degree that they existed after he got into office. And they're all changes that we've been living with ever since. And the real question is why? So I think to really get to the answer why, you have to look beyond the policies, again, to these changes in the fundamental structure of our political process. For example, how many people knew that Woodrow Wilson was basically the first president ever to be nominated and elected under the presidential primary system that we have today? Did anyone know that? 1912 was the first election when presidential primaries were used. Before that, the delegates, how many people here have been to a state convention, by the way? So, how you get there is you go to the precinct convention, you go to the Senate district convention, and then state convention, national convention. and it's a representative process at each step. And with these presidential primaries, not only 12 states had them in 1912, but those 12 states were very influential, not only in making sure that Woodrow Wilson got nominated, but also in dividing the Republican field. Does everyone remember how Theodore Roosevelt ran on the progressive ticket, split the Republican Party, and then that allowed Wilson to get elected? That was really a result of the primary election process also, because Roosevelt went to the Republican National Convention claiming this mandate based on primaries. So it's very interesting that that was the first election when primaries were used, and it had all those profound results in how the federal government likes to run our lives today. There's a few other facts that are worth highlighting. You know, a lot of the political careerism, the family dynasties that we see today, I mean, we're talking about electing another Bush or another Clinton to the presidency. None of that really existed before the progressive era and some of these reforms that they put in place that heightened the influence of name recognition, heightened the influence of money in the process. And I think where we can do better, especially as political activists, is to not look at all these things in terms of ideology, but also to look at them as a product of these institutional changes that happened 100 years ago that we're still living with today, but they're sort of invisible because these changes happen and they have these effects, and yet most people don't even remember that these changes were made. And so it's quite literally that there are the effects of a broken system, but we've sort of become, the system has become invisible around us, and we're failing to take into account the influence that it has on our political life. So I should at least tell you quickly about the book before we get to the Q&A, because there's no way I can share all the different ideas that are in the book in a 20-minute talk. But there's 3 big reasons I've been told that why every patriotic and concerned American should read this book. And the number 1 reason is that it'll show you where some of these trends that we're seeing are leading. One person said it'll help you turn your headlights on even if you think you already have them on. It'll help you cut through the noise and see what's really happening. The second thing is that the book is going to save you a lot of time because it basically has 7 years of research condensed down to about 250 pages, something that can literally be read in one day. So one person said you can read this book or you can read 46 other books, but first you have to find the 46 other books, and then you'd have to put it all together and still figure some stuff out, and this book does all that for you. The third thing is that the book will really shift your perspective toward a more optimistic view of where our country can be in the future. One person said it gave him hope for the future of the country, and the reason why is because it doesn't waste a lot of time with these platitudes. It gets into some of the concrete institutional changes. I mentioned the direct primaries. It gets into other areas as well where we could potentially change some of these rules, whether it happens before or after some other bigger problem occurs is an open question. But I think the real key is to get people informed that these alternatives are available to us as a self-governing and free people, and just get people thinking about some of these things that most people, I guess, haven't thought about in about 100 years, which is why we're still living with them. So today, I really think that we're at such an extreme that even shifting people's understanding of how our process works, what its effects are, would be revolutionary, because first and foremost, it would reverse a lot of this declining confidence that we have in our system of self-governance. It's kind of a rhetorical question, but what happens when a free people who govern themselves, what happens when they give up on their system of self-governance? It can't be a good thing, right? And that's really our greatest challenge today. So let's rediscover the power that we have through our existing institutions. let's take back our country, this last best hope for freedom, and let's make America a shining city on a hill again. Thank you. So, yeah.
Two areas you didn't mention that I've felt real strong about. One is it happened before I was born, and the other one after I was born. When they began to have open elections for senators, rather than have the senators actually being elected by the state houses and actually represent the state houses in Congress,
Yes.
in Washington. I've always felt that was a bad situation. The other one was for Mr. Sam. We owe him the very great honor of having the state representatives vote their conscience rather than and be legal representatives.
I'm sorry, Mr. Who?
Sam Rayburn, Speaker of the House.
Right.
He got the people that to run to be lawyers, for instance,
Okay.
and they vote their conscience rather than the will of the people. You go to his library, and that's his claim to fame.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and then you got a late by after him too.
So his contribution was to rope them all in and subject them to majority rule.
There
Is
you
that
go.
the idea? Okay.
And I think that's had a lot to do with our country.
Yeah.
And it started back in the 30s, mid-30s,
Right.
and it just moved forward very fast.
Yeah, I want to. I'm not as informed on the second point you made there, which is very interesting. I'm gonna have to look into
Go
that.
visit his library
Over in Bonham, right?
in Bonham.
Yeah. The first point, though, about the 17th Amendment that made it so that senators are elected, I had a thing in my talk about that. For some reason, I skipped over it, so thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, it was a huge change. It was a change to the structure, because now that we don't have state legislatures with a role in choosing the senators, what are they going to do now? I mean, you have so many stories of senators that don't set foot in their state for 5 years, and then they raise a bunch of money in San Francisco and Washington and New York, and then they go home and campaign for a year, and they have so much money that no one can afford to run against them. And that's kind of how senatorial elections work today. I mean, you look at this last one in Texas, where Cornyn had something like $8 million. So the only way, I mean, there's no way anybody was going to raise that kind of money to go against him. And, you know, the one guy that did basically got completely smeared. I mean, he didn't just get beat. His name is mud because of all the negative campaign ads that they ran against him.
I think the same thing's true of the House, though. Our representatives don't understand what we want to do anyway, and don't care.
No, they don't care. There's a story I heard, actually. I was talking to Rena about it before. It may even be your all's member of Congress. I'm not sure. This was back during the debt ceiling crisis, and someone went to him with a poll showing that 70% of his constituents were opposed to this vote he was going to make in favor of some backroom deal. And he told this guy, he said, you know, 70% of my constituents may not agree with what I'm going to do, but if I vote with them, I won't get reelected. So kind of think about that for a second. If I vote with 70% of my constituents, I won't get reelected. And this guy, he came up to me after I was giving a talk, and he said, I don't understand what this guy was even thinking. So I explained it to him like this. I said, what he means is, if he votes against what the people that are giving him campaign money want him to do, then they're going to give that money to someone else in the primary. He'll have a primary challenger, and then he'll lose the re-election. And in fact, the guy was reelected, and that's it. But I want to say one more thing about the 17th Amendment, because one thing that people overlook almost universally, I mean, there's books that kind of mention it, but 3/4 of the states were already using direct primaries to nominate senators before the 17th Amendment was passed. So now you think about the effect that has. And I briefly mentioned during the talk this representative structure that we have through the convention system that used to select candidates, but today they basically just pass resolutions and have no role in either selecting or denying renomination to the candidates. I mean, you look before 1910, and the term of service for a member of Congress was much shorter. And a big reason why was because they were all nominated by conventions where, people more like the folks in this room, less like a lot of the folks that are not here getting informed tonight, were deciding who should get nominated and who should be denied renomination. Interesting fact about the presidency. Since that 1912 election, not a single incumbent president has ever been denied renomination for a second term. In fact, if you look what FDR did, he wasn't denied renomination for a third term or a fourth term. And now we have presidential term limits in theory, but you look at what's happening there. I mean, how many Bushes are we going to let roll through the presidency in a 30-year period? How many Clintons are we going to let go through there? So that what's that?
One.
I hope so. It'll be interesting if she gets nominated, though. The point being is that a lot of these things have come from these little obscure things about the process that changed that went on to have big effects on our political life and really curbing the role of ordinary citizens in the process.
It used to, the representatives came back and lived in the community where they represent. They were in a full-time job in
Right.
Washington.
Right,
They had to come back and work to make a living,
right.
and they had to meet with the people they put them in office to start with. And I think that's a big part of it. How many times do you get to sit down with your representative and tell them what you think,
Right.
They don't want to hear it.
Well, and the other problem is, the average term of service in the House and in the Senate used to be like 6 years. So 1 term for a senator on average, and 3 in the House. And that was the kind of system where, it was informal, but if someone's only going to be there for 3 terms, they tend to think about returning to private life and having a business, not how many more regulations can I think of, or what does this lobbyist want me to do. It's a totally different frame of mind than what they have today. But I wanted to say something. I guess I didn't really complete the thought that I started with on the 17th Amendment, because if you look at those 3/4 of the states that were using direct primaries to nominate senators before direct elections were the law of the land, think about the effect that had. It totally wiped out all that representative structure that we used to have in the convention system. So now everything is majority rule, well, plurality rule, I guess, in some respects. It's all about money. It's all about name recognition. And you could almost never have a candidate who didn't have some kind of connections to the powers that be, so to speak,
Okay, so
get nominated. Yeah.
if that's the case, explain, the liberals' answer to this is always campaign finance reform.
Right.
They say, get the money out of politics, get the money out of politics. In theory, it sounds good. I mean, if the small people had a greater voice, but does it really work that way? I mean,
no,
explain, do you understand, do you have an idea of what campaign finance reform would do to the system if it were implemented?
It would even entrench incumbents further.
You think something like
That's
that?
the effect that it has had.
Yeah, that's what Kane-Feingold.
Yeah, McCain-Feingold is such a labyrinth of rules. You could probably file a criminal charge against any elected official on the basis of that law. The only trick is most of them are incumbents and want to pat each other on the back, so they don't do it. But that law is so complicated. I mean, political parties have to comply with it also. So I'm down in Harris County. They had to hire 3 or 4 lawyers to figure out all the different rules and make sure that they're in compliance with McCain-Feingold specifically. So what it does is it just entrenches the same old crowd in office. I mean, that's the effect that it has. And also they talk about public finance. Okay, so if we have public financing of elections, who gets to make the rules on who gets the money? I mean,
That's the tricky part, isn't it?
it's not tricky. You could predict who the money's gonna go to. It's gonna go to the same people who are already in office. They're gonna make sure of that.
Who took poll tax out of,
Poll tax? What now?
who took the poll tax out of voters?
Who took the poll tax
I
out?
had to, you used to have to buy a poll tax to vote.
I mean, there was the Supreme Court, constitutional amendment, there was a bunch of stuff there, but
Now anybody can vote whether you own property or whether you don't.
right. And anyone can vote in primaries, but very few
And
people
most
do.
people are gonna vote for whatever's best for them. So if you're on welfare, you're sure not gonna vote for somebody to make you off welfare.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but if you look at how most people are making a decision, so if you have a congressional primary, and by the way, most congressional primaries, I'm talking about at the House level, how many of those are even contested today? Very few. So if you, but even in the ones that are, you know, there's one north of Houston this last time around, and 70% of the votes went to the incumbent. Now, what was the decision-making process by those voters? It was a guy they'd heard of. It was a guy that sent them mail with a little logo that, for the House of Representatives on it. Some official-looking, you know, which they can do. They have the money to do that too. They use government money for that part. But there's all these things. Yeah. Did you have a question or? Sorry, back there. No. Okay.
Well, how did a guy by the name of Barack Obama get elected? I'm still puzzled over this whole thing. You said it had to be big money. You said that the convention should act on this. It seems to me that the convention put him in.
The convention put him in?
Well, it seemed to me, I'd never heard of the guy before that. All of a sudden, there he was as the hero of the group. And then from there on, where did it go? Where did the money come from? How did he do this? Didn't he do this pretty much based on what you want?
No. He raised a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
He raised a lot of money. And here's how the Democratic nominating process works, which is a little bit different from the Republican process. But once a Democratic candidate for the presidency, you know, wins a primary in a state, those delegates are bound to that candidate. They're bound to vote for that candidate in the national convention. So a lot of the decision making really happens in the primary votes. And not only that, but if you look at how the delegates are bound, under the rules of the Democratic Party, and this is completely bizarre, and maybe some of y'all have heard about this, maybe not, but the candidate actually gets to slate their own delegates. In other words, if, let's say in 2008, if Hillary Clinton won 45% of the vote in the state and Barack Obama won 55%, Barack Obama got to pick 55% of the delegates, Hillary got to pick, in other words, names. These people are going to be loyal to me, these people are going to vote for me in the national convention. It wasn't the convention at all. And that's actually a huge myth that we see today. We saw it in 2008, we saw it again in 2012. This myth of the brokered convention. Somehow we're going to get to a convention where one of the candidates doesn't have either a strong enough plurality to win, or they don't have a majority, and so all the delegates are going to get together, or somehow there's going to be a little divide where it can swing one way or another, basically where the convention gets to decide. And it hasn't been that way since 1972. And the reason why it hasn't been that way since 1972 is because in 1968, the Democrats decided that they didn't like how their convention went. And so now all future conventions had to have as many delegates bound by direct primary votes as possible. So before the 1972 election, all the state legislatures that they controlled, they went and passed these mandatory primary laws, but they would apply to both parties, right? So now, since 1972, a majority of the delegates for both major party conventions are picked in the primaries. So you could never have a convention that's undecided by the time the delegates get there. It's always going to be decided in the primaries. I don't know, you look like you have another question, or?
No,
Well, but to expand on what he was asking, is that the mass appeal was because of the social media contacts. He reached out through social media, which the Republican didn't really know how to use well.
Right.
Okay, and most of his money initially was $1 and $2 and $3 and $5 donations from all these people that thought he was so cool that he could be a celebrity. Okay, it was about being a celebrity, being cool.
He raised a lot of money from large donors early on.
Well, but he,
Yeah. But,
There
but,
was a
but,
lot.
I mean, if you really want to boil it down, why did he get elected? Why did he get elected under that process and under that system? It's because he was a demagogue. It's because he formed a cult of personality around himself. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's how candidates get nominated and elected to the presidency today, and to other offices. But you know, other offices aren't as exciting, so it's a little bit toned down. Or they just have enough money to railroad themselves back through like Cornyn. Is there another question over
Like
here?
Bill Clinton,
What's
he got elected governor, lieutenant governor first in Arkansas,
Yeah.
without a dime. Then he got to be governor, then he got to be president of the United States, and now he's worth big.
Right.
And he started out
With nothing.
with a nickel.
well,
Yeah.
would we be better off without a primary system and let it go to the convention? Let it be decided there?
That's basically the proposal that I make in the book that I wrote. Like, in the way you get there in kind of concrete terms, you don't do away with the primary. You just have a primary where instead of all the voters picking a candidate's name on the ballot, they're going to choose a delegate to represent them at the next convention or at the state convention. And it would resolve a lot of these issues.
You know how we're doing it here in Texas, next
The
cycle?
two-step, yeah, it's going to be,
It's gonna be awesome.
it's going to be in that direction, yeah. In Texas law limit, so next time in Texas, it's going to be 25% of the national delegates are going to be chosen based on a straw poll at the state convention. So y'all need to go and become delegates to the state convention so you can influence who those delegates are going to be going to the national convention for. But it kind of gets away from this idea that we're just going to have a statewide vote. Whoever wins the statewide vote gets everything. It breaks it up a little bit, and I believe it makes it more favorable to the grassroots and grassroots type influence.
Well, you know, in 2008, McCain was selected before we even had a primary.
Well, look what's happening right now. Look what happened in 2012. Mitt Romney was the inevitable candidate the whole time. I mean, they never let up on that narrative. So you'd have, you know, Newt Gingrich rose in the polls for a little while, Rick Santorum, but he was the inevitable candidate the whole time. And why? A couple of reasons. Number one, he'd already run once before in 2008, so he had a little bit of name ID. Same with McCain, actually. McCain had run in 2000, again in 2008, so he was almost a nominee by default, similar to Romney in 2012. But the other thing is Romney had unlimited money to draw on. You know, if it wasn't his own personal fortune, he raised a lot of money from all sorts of big donors. So he had the money, he had the name ID, he had run before. So who does that favor this time around? I mean, now people are saying Bush is the inevitable candidate. Under the process that we have, it's not a far cry from what's probably going to happen. But
Oh my God, we're in trouble.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't work to make sure that doesn't happen, but I want to be sensitive to the time too. How are we doing?
Doug's got a question.
I have a question. Part of the reason Romney lost is because 3 million Republicans stayed home.
Evangelical.
Evangelical Republicans stayed
Let
home.
me say something about that, because I have a
And I
little
don't
bit.
doubt that one bit.
I have a little bit different version of this talk that I've been giving to Republican clubs. And basically, the idea of that talk is to make the point that, hey, you know, this process that we're using to pick Republican nominees isn't really working to our advantage. You know, it becomes, I think one commentator called it a circular firing squad. And that hasn't quite started yet, but you can start to see it happening a little bit. I mean, there was an event last week or the week before in New Hampshire that had 19 Republican hopefuls.
Yeah.
What's that going to look like by the time they're all shooting at each other? It's going to be a mess. A big reason why Romney lost is because Obama's team didn't even need to do any research. All they had to do was keep saying the same things that the Republican candidates said about him in the primary. So that system is terrible, not just to get a Republican candidate elected, but also to get a conservative candidate elected because of the amount of money and all these demagogic appeals that they end up making. There was one other thing I was going to say about that, but it's slipping my mind now. Oh, I know what I was going to say. In 5 of the 6 last presidential elections, the Republican candidate has not won the popular vote. Think about that for a second. 5 of the 6 general elections for the presidency that we've had have been won by Democrats. So that includes the 2000 election that was swung the other way in the Electoral College. But if you think about that, then it really starts to make even less sense. Why do we use this process that basically the Democrats created and bound us to in the early 70s? And oh, by the way, they're continuing to further push that process down our throats with some of the recent rule changes in the last few years.
How are
So-
you doing
so
with
why-
the Republican House or whatever to do any different? To me, it looks like the Republicans are falling right in with them today.
Right.
I saw a picture of Boehner kissing Pelosi on the cheek on tax day. You know, and you're just like, what the did we do? You know, voting Republicans into the House.
Right. Well, I mean, where the laws would need to change is actually at the state legislative level. So that's some good news there. And I talk about a couple scenarios in the book that are actually realistic that could happen. But another scenario is that you don't have to have legislative change to change some of these rules. You can change it through party rules. And according to the Supreme Court, party rules override state law where they're in conflict. So there's a lot of latitude to change the system. Now, is it going to happen before a lot more people wake up? Maybe, maybe not. But you know, what can you do but try and get people informed that there's other options out there? So that's what I'm trying to do.
Exactly.
How are we doing on time? Are we good? Oh yeah. So so the book is $10. The CD is $15. If you buy them together, I'll cut you a deal, $20. And I only have a few of these, but if you do the package deal, I even throw one of these in for free. It's a little guide to the Constitution that I wrote. So anyway, I think I don't want to take up any more.
Is that CD, it's an audio book?
Yeah, it's an MP3 audio,
Yeah.
so most cars will play it in MP3 players.
I heard a little bit coming in that somebody asked this lady that they nominated today, or voted on today, would she vote in favor of Obama's amnesty stuff, although it violates the Constitution? And she said yes, and they voted for her anyway. That doesn't make any sense. Yet she's going to vote, she's going to say, I'm going to support the Constitution of the United States of America. Yeah, they're all lying. That's a lie.
Not gonna do anything.
They're what?
Very good. Thank you. We got an email this afternoon. One of the local people had contacted the Chamber of Commerce. Is there any members of the Chamber of Commerce in here tonight?
No.
Buddy? Okay. But we thought it was interesting because he was talking, I guess, to Scott, about the damage that's been done to the area because of the low level of the water in our lake. And I think it's been a tremendous hindrance and damage to the city and the county. And the answer he got was, well, only one business has failed. And nobody's come in complaining about low water in the lake. So there's no reason for me to go down and say anything to the BRA about it. Well, that's the Chamber of Commerce for Granbury, Texas. Makes you feel real good about our chamber.
And you wanna know how the city feels?
The city is really fighting him on this.
Doesn't read his newspaper, does he?
I've heard Mike complain a lot about it. So I don't know where you get the idea he doesn't care whether the lake's down or not.
I'm just telling you what the email stated. It came from you.
Came
So
from
shoot the
him.
messenger.
Came from you. We don't want to leave on a downer, but how many of you got the email about the old Italian gentleman that lived alone up in New Jersey?
Use your phone.
So the Italian gentleman wanted to plant his annual tomato garden, but it was very difficult to work as the ground was unusually hard. His only son, Vinny, who used to help him, was in prison. The old man wrote a letter to his son and described his predicament. He says, "Dear Vincent, I'm feeling pretty sad because it looks like I won't be able to plant my tomato garden this year. I'm just getting too old to be digging up the garden plot. I know if you were here, my troubles would be over. I know you would be happy to dig the plot for me, like in the old days. Love, Papa." A few days later, he received a letter from his son. "Dear Papa, don't dig up that garden. That's where the bodies are buried. Love, Vinny." At 4 a.m. the next morning, FBI agents and local police arrived and dug up the entire area without finding any bodies. They apologized to the old man and left. That same day, the old man received another letter from his son. "Dear Papa, go ahead and plant the tomatoes. That's the best I could do under the circumstances."
That's cool.
Pretty good, huh? He's not funky good for something. Well, thank you everybody for being here tonight. We appreciate it. And thank you, Carl, for your presentation. I appreciate that too.
Did you mention that Maurice or someplace, or?
Maurice, it's the D at ROTC. Maurice.
Oh, yeah, he's
Okay, I just want to know if he was sick.
scholarships are given out.
Scholarship.
No, that's all.
Quite a few, I understand. He's a busy guy, that Maurice.
Yeah, he's a big part of us here.
Yeah, we missed Maurice. He's not a big part of it.
Going to hearing some.
We had a real tickle the other night. We were over at the Parker County Conservative Group, brand new group. They had, I'm guessing, 150 people there or so. And Alan West was standing up there and he said, "Man, this is a pale crowd out here." So, he was the only one there. But he's a great guy. We really enjoyed getting to meet him. And so that's the reason we encourage everybody to go to these events when you get the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you.